chapter 11, that's what I think of. Chromosomes. And not just any chromosomes, but human. Because we're more interested in humans than we are in Labrador retrievers or fruit flies or flowers or something like that. So they start out the chapter talking about something that I find it very interesting, and y'all can read over it if you want to, but they discovered, and I think that this has been known a long time, that very, very intelligent people oftentimes suffer from mental disorders. Okay, so they say something to this man that's brilliant, and then they talk about this man that was a professor of mathematics. And this guy was so brilliant that he solved some mathematical questions that scientists have been studying these questions since ancient times. He was able to get answers to things that other people didn't understand. And he could explain it very clearly. He's a brilliant, brilliant man. Okay, this guy is the subject of the movie. Okay, there was a movie about him called A Beautiful Mind. And he was a mathematician who was absolutely brilliant. And sometime in his life, he developed schizophrenia. So that's a really serious mental problem, something to do with the brain. And he was treated for schizophrenia in a mental hospital, and eventually he got to the point where he was back to himself again. So it was a period of his life that he spent in the mental institution. And y'all know there's a lot of people that y'all know as brilliant people, like Picasso, like Van Gogh, like Leonardo da Vinci. These people that are known for their great brilliance also had a lot of mental problems. Vincent Van Gogh committed suicide because he had all these mental problems, but he was also a genius. So I mentioned a few men there. Genius is much more common in men than it is in women, just like mental retardation is more common in men. But there are women also that fall into that category of genius. And so you hear about, a lot of times, especially creative people, like people that are in the theater, people that are painters or writers, having mental disorders. And they're related to not only intelligence, but also that artistic or creative aspect of their life. And we know that. It's a common knowledge, sort of like they call old wives' tale type stuff. And they're finding out now that really and truly there's a genetic reason, there's a chromosomal reason. And as they do that, as they get better at studying this, the treatment for these things gets better. And so people who maybe in the past, like poor Van Gogh, lived a tortured life, maybe if he lived today, we could treat him with medication and he would not have the problems that he had. So thank goodness we're understanding these aspects of the brain that make these things occur. They really don't know why yet, but they know that high intelligence and creative ability and mental disorders are related to each other in some way. Okay. Has something to do with chromosomes. Okay. So they're talking about human chromosomes on page 170 and 171. And they got some pictures on page 170 that really, I thought, oh my goodness. Thank goodness you're college students, because figure 11.2 is really out there. It's really out there. But basically what it's saying is talking about the gender of humans, okay, and the sex organs of humans, and how sex is determined. In humans, it's XX is female, XY is male. Well, really all you need is a Y to be male, at least one Y. So the reason a person is a female is that they have no Y. And so they're showing you in the book there that all of our sex organs start out the same in the development of the fetus, and that everybody's got a default condition of female. If the Y chromosome is there, the same structures that are found in the female develop into slightly different forms, and that makes the male sex organ. So that's all they're saying. If you don't really want to look at that, it's kind of it's not a defensive picture, but it's something you're going like, what in the world? It has to do with the development of ovaries versus testes, and all the other organs of the sexes are related to each other in embryonic development. And if you got the Y, they become male. Okay, so that's just saying that. Okay, so the chromosomes are important to determine the things about the characteristics of the person. So let's look over on page 171 for a minute. There's something that we already saw. I think it was in chapter 9, maybe even chapter 8. It's called a karyotype. So this is a photograph of an individual's chromosomes. And they're very easy to make, these karyotypes, if you've got the right equipment. So the pictures here are not in color. They're in black and white. This is how they used to be, because the chemicals that they would put on the DNA to give the banding pattern were not pretty bright colors like they are now. But anyway, this is an old-fashioned karyotype with black and white and shades of gray. The point is that you can line the chromosomes up with the homologous pairs, the one that came from your mom and the one that came from your daddy. You can put them together, and there's 22 of them that determine everything about you except your gender, your sex. And then the sex chromosome pair, the X and the Y, determine your gender. Okay, so look at the figure there on page 171, and tell me if this person is male or female. Female. They've done it again. So there's 3 karyotypes that we've seen so far, all of which were female. I wish they would throw one in here that was male. Okay, so male would look like this. The X chromosome is longer than the Y. There's a lot of genes on the X chromosome that determine all kinds of characteristics of the person. The Y chromosome has the genes that make a person male. Okay, so everybody's got to have at least one X, and those that have a Y are male. Okay, so karyotyping. We can take that karyotype, and we can look at that and determine some things about the individual. Okay, so this is a diagnostic tool. Okay, so then they talk about some problems with genetic inheritance. Okay, in chromosomes in people. They start out by talking about what's called autosomal inheritance in section 2, 11.2. So autosomal means that the genes we're talking about are not on the sex chromosomes. So autosomal means not sex. In other words, these genes are on chromosomes 1 through 22. And if something is called sex-linked, it involves the sex chromosomes. So autosomal inheritance is what section 11.2 is about. Okay, they give you some examples of autosomal dominant and autosomal recessive in humans, because this is something we care more about humans than we do about puppies and flowers, probably. Okay, so what are the autosomal dominant characteristics? Okay, there's a name for it, and they don't include, yes they did, it's in the figure. Okay, this thing that's dominant is called a chondroplasia. And this is one type of dwarfism. There are other types of dwarfism besides this. Okay? This is dominant. So this is dominant over regular height. In other words, if you've got achondroplasia, you've got at least one dominant gene for that. And they write it different ways. I'm not really sure how they're going to do it. But what they're saying is the achondroplasia gene is dominant over normal height. This is achondroplasia, and this would be normal. So the way that you become achondroplasic is if you receive one achondroplasia gene, because it's dominant over normal height. Okay? So they show you some pictures there of some people who have achondroplasia. And I think it's great that they did this, because you know these people. You've heard of them before. They used to have a picture in the old book of a man that I knew from my childhood. I knew this guy was in the movies. But y'all know these guys. You know who Vern Troyer is. He's the guy that played Mini-Me in the Austin Powers movies. So these people have achondroplasia. It runs in their family. Okay, runs in their family. So you know a lot of people that have achondroplasia, they meet someone else who has it, and they end up having children together. And they don't call themselves dwarfs, they call themselves little people. And that's the way they want to refer to themselves. Okay. So they have conventions every year where the little people have an annual convention. They go together to this big city, and they meet each other. And a lot of times they meet people, and they get married, and they have children together. Because this is dominant, you know, they could be this. They could be heterozygotes. So when they have children, they can have children that are normal height, the recessive conditions. Let me show you how that would happen. You have 2 parents that are carriers for normal. Sounds funny, doesn't it? If this person has children with this person, well, this is just like the Punnett square that we had for the flowers, right? So 3/4 of the children are going to get the dominant gene. And 3/4 of them are going to have achondroplasia. But 1/4 are not. So these people are going to have normal height. So 2 achondroplagic parents can give birth to a normal height child. If you have a achondroplagic parent and a parent that's not achondroplagic, the odds are even better that half their children will have normal height. So have y'all seen that movie, that television series, Little People, Big World? You know, I talk about that, and I'm sure it's on YouTube too, so they don't mind if I mention it. But Little People, Big World is about 2 people who are little people that have a family. And how many children do they have? They have 4 children. And how many are normal height? 3 are normal height. Okay, so those kids dodged the bullet on that one. Okay, so that you only expect 1/4 of them to be normal height. But again,